Get out of here, Dewey.
What are y'all doing in here?
It's called
copium.
and you don't want no part of this shit.
Copium?
What's it do?
It turns all your bad feelings into good feelings. It's a nightmare.
I'm thinking maybe I'd like to try me some of that.
Copium.
If you're watching this video, you've probably watched a couple of Marvel movies. In fact, I'd venture to say you enjoyed those Marvel movies, but not anymore. No. Because these days, it's not cool to still like Marvel. Ergo, vis-a-vis, you're not allowed to be excited about Avengers Doomsday. But I still am. Fuck those people. If you are a Marvel fan that wants to be excited for Doomsday, the real question is, what is the best copium? Like, what's the best version of why it's still okay to be excited for it? Why is there room to be excited for it? Why could it still be great? Well, here at Nerdvengers Tower, we have cooked up a perfect formula, a beautiful blend of facts and reaching that is sure to drown out all of the haterade out there and make any Marvel fan have a Ratatouille-like flashback to the Endgame day. Because I figured it out. The perfect copium.
Yes! 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 Yes!
But before we get into that, let's explain why all of the other copium that's out there right now is failing us. That shit is not strong enough. We need something way more powerful. So these days, a lot of people will be like, Marvel's totally cooked. How could you possibly be excited for Doomsday? And some people will say, because the Russo Brothers are back. And look, that's cool. Like, I like the Russos. And frankly, I think a lot of people are actually right about this. Like, they're going to make a big difference here. But the problem is it's not strong enough copium because you actually need an extra dose of extra copium to make this copium even worse. Because unfortunately, the Russo brothers made a bunch of movies that are like real bad. Like, ooh, I'm not trying to hate, but I will say that this whole situation would be a lot easier if y'all had delivered like constant bangers and came back. Then I'd be like, Russo's back. I mean, I think the truth is both Marvel and the Russo brothers kind of went astray when they broke up the band. But there's just so many questions, and there's a lot of reasons to believe that taking a long time off of doing something while you're in your prime is a big obstacle for you getting right back into the flow. So I like this one. I like the copium here, but it needs an extra dose of copium. Like, you need to explain the Russos kind of fall off, and then I guess through that copium and a copiumception of sorts, you can come to the conclusion that yes, they were always meant to stay here. It would have been better if they did, and now they're back, and so we're back. But for me, it's not strong enough, man. It's not really doing it for me. But the MCU has fallen off. There's no way you can be hyped for Doomsday. And people will say, but RDJ is coming back. And unfortunately, it's a similar story here. It's just not good enough copium, man. This is another thing I think people are actually right about. RDJ is world class. He's an absolutely incredible actor. And I think the best case, like the steel man for this argument carrying water, is the fact that RDJ had no reason to come back other than if he was interested and he thought he could do something really cool. I mean, he had all the money in the world. His legacy was completely intact, and he just won a fucking Oscar before coming back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, like, he didn't need this at all. I'm telling you right now, the only reason he did is because he thought it was really fucking cool, and he thought it would excite audiences. Like, that's it. Like, I appreciate that. I think that's what it is. But unfortunately, when you get paid $100 million or whatever it was for 2 movies, it's also fair that people are being like, well, maybe he just wanted that money. And people are viewing this as a cash grab. People are viewing this as like a desperate thing that Marvel needed to do. And they're just like, oh my God, RDJ, people like him. People like Dr. Doom. Boom. This is one of those things that's going to speak for itself when the movie actually comes out. Maybe when the trailers start popping off, people will be like, whoa, that's actually really intriguing. I guess we shouldn't have doubted RDJ. But because they're going to hold so much of this as a mystery and not like tell us exactly what's going on here, we're never going to really know until we see it whether or not this is an actually well thought out story and it's something that we can all appreciate as fans. Like, literally, we can come up with all kinds of cool theories, and I fucking have. But at the end of the day, the narrative about RDJ coming back, the amount of money, the state of Marvel, it's all working against itself. Like, it's very hard to get people really excited about this. Are people interested? Yes, but hype is not necessarily the same thing as faith, right? And I just think a lot of people, despite maybe already knowing they're going to go see Doomsday, they're out there talking mad amounts of shit on it. And this copium right here about RDJ is just not strong enough to like really justify having hope for Avengers Doomsday. New Marvel ever since Endgame blows. All the characters suck. What are you excited about Doomsday for? But they're bringing back the OGs. It's not just RDJ, it's Chris Evans. All of the Avengers are coming back. I think this is honestly close to the best copium that's out there, because it's totally true that most people just don't like the new cast of characters for the Marvel Cinematic Universe at all. Like, there's like 13 social media accounts that are really gonna make it seem like people were really fucking with Miss Marvel or She-Hulk, but if you followed it like I have, it's just not true, man. Like, you look at the numbers, that's not what's going on. The new cast kind of sucks, bro. Like, they do. They're lame, and it's maybe not even their fault, because a lot of the material that they were giving, as we're going to get to in a second, was subpar, and not really what Kevin Feige or his lieutenants of parliament and the whole, think tank over there were really interested in. And so therefore, they really are kind of second fiddle, and it's so obvious. It's so not delivered with the same amount of passion and excitement that the other characters were in the Infinity Saga. And so they suck. And look, I don't know whose fault it is exactly, but it doesn't really matter. We got here and they suck. And because that is such a prevalent thing, like, it's so obvious, people really, really resonate with this point, it actually is really exciting that the OGs are coming back. Chris Evans as Captain America is awesome, and I do think it's going to be exciting for people. But they've kind of also gotten into this place where it just, again, it's feeling like that money grab thing. It feels like they're just desperate to get back what they once had, which doesn't inspire much confidence. And look, a lot of the reporting around this, like, there was a big article written by Tatiana Siegel, I think it was in like 2021, and she was talking about like the Daredevil redo, that whole thing, talking about bringing OGs back, bringing Robert Downey Jr. back, and she really couched that article as like, basically everything fell apart and they're just desperately trying to get back to what they were doing. So it's not really good enough to just kind of bring up that they're all coming back, although I think it's the strongest copium that most people bring up out there. Also, this kind of doesn't work because at least for Doomsday, we know you're going to be getting Sam Wilson's Captain America Avengers team from Brave New World. You're going to be getting Bucky Barnes and Yelena Belova's Thunderbolt/New Avengers with a Z, and you're going to be getting the Fantastic Four with Pedro, Vanessa Kirby, and all of them. Those are like the main players of Doomsday. A lot of OGs are going to be in there, but most of that's for Secret Wars. And the reality is, I think a lot of people are more excited for Secret Wars. It just holds a lot more opportunity, a lot of crazy things that they could do, and that's where you're probably going to see a lot of the really cool stuff. So this whole OGs coming back thing doesn't really work for Doomsday, because Doomsday is seemingly the project that changed the most, right? Secret Wars was already on that board when they announced the Kang Dynasty. Secret Wars was likely to be very close to what it's still going to be, maybe with Kang out of the picture. But the shift from Kang Dynasty into Doomsday feels very jarring. This whole Robert Downey Jr. thing, people are viewing it as a last-minute ass pull, as a switcheroo.
Why?
But enough of the foreplay. Let me tell you the best copium that's out there. And one of the reasons this is the best copium is because it's true, or at least true enough. First, let's start by asking you a few questions. Number one, do you remember how many times the Russo brothers brought up Secret Wars during the press for both Infinity War and Endgame? Second question, do you remember what Michael Waldron used to say when he was asked about Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter around the time of Loki?
Going off of Endgame, this is just a real nerdy question that I love getting into this debate. It's one of my favorites. Michael, do you think that Steve Rogers went back in time into the sacred timeline and sort of stayed with his wife, Peggy Carter, and stayed hidden? Or did he retire in an alternate reality in the multiverse where he was able to make changes and have effects in that reality? Or can you not say?
That's such a good question. It's really interesting. I would love to see the answer.
Okay, that is a wonderful diplomatic answer. I'll take it.
You see, recently I've gone back to watch a lot of Michael Waldron interviews about Loki, about Marvel, and all of that sort of stuff. And the reason why is because there have been new leaks suggesting that Steve Rogers and his life with Peggy is essential to understanding the multiverse and what Dr. Doom wants. He essentially caused all of the incursions. Doom wants to kill him. And while I was doing this research of Michael Waldron's comments about Steve Rogers and the Loki stuff, I came across an interview where Michael Waldron talks about how he went to see a cut of Endgame with like previs and like really bad CGI and all that sort of stuff, but he got to see an assembly cut of Avengers Endgame as he was working on creating the Loki show. And Waldron has described the experience of writing Loki and then writing Multiverse of Madness as an expanding of what was already established within the lore of Avengers Endgame. And there's actually a lot of stuff in both Infinity War and Endgame that you can see is taken into the Loki show and recontextualized via the lens of the multiverse, TVA, He Who Remains, possibly other versions of our reality. And basically, I've come to the conclusion that Marvel was setting up stuff for Secret Wars and for what was at the time the Kang Dynasty, but was also going to involve Doctor Doom. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it's pretty obvious when you look at the Loki show and when you look at Avengers Endgame that Marvel had plans for this Secret Wars, Marvel had plans for Earth and these other universes, and time runs out and all of this stuff. And yes, they have altered the plan because of Kang. However, I truly believe that Kang was always a stepping stone. And this is long before Jonathan Majors was getting into trouble and all that kind of stuff happened. I always thought that Kang was a distraction, a sleight of hand, if you will. Because when they announced the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, every nerd worth their weight in salt understood that Kang and the Secret Wars is kind of a mismatch. Doctor Doom is way more of a popular Secret Wars character, not only because of what happens in the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars, where God Emperor Doom is established, but in all the other Secret Wars, Doom ends up becoming the main villain guy. Like, he takes the power of the Beyonder, like, that's just what it is. Kang is like a side note to that. In fact, Kang is usually a side note in Marvel Comics. And remember, Jeff Steiner reported years and years and years ago that one of his best sources had told him that Doctor Doom was always the villain of Secret Wars. Always, even when Kang was still the villain of the Kang Dynasty. Now look, according to Alex Perez, what happened was a change of plans to take something that was going to happen in Secret Wars and pull it in to the Kang Dynasty. This is all because of Majors and the problems and blah, 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 blah. But essentially, not that much has changed. They've just taken something they were already going to do, and really, from what Alex has reported, they were going to set up Doom as this thing that was removed from the timeline because he was a danger, but then he pops back up again, and then that's a part of Secret Wars. He ends up taking the power and being the big threat. And then, in the next saga, Doom was going to be like the Thanos, the big bad, the Kang of the next saga. Marvel instead has opted to pull that in to Doomsday, the replacement for the Kang Dynasty. And so what I'm really trying to say to you here is, like, this is really where the planning is. This is stuff that has been planned for years and years and years. And in fact, the real explanation for why Phase 4 and Phase 5 was so sloppy and Marvel actually fell off was because this stuff right here with Secret Wars and Doomsday and Kang and the Kang Dynasty, this stuff right here was what Kevin Feige was actually focusing on. You know how there are all these reports these days where Kevin has admitted to just doing too much, to being spread way too thin, etc., etc.? Well, one of the things that's not admitted during these interviews is that part of the reason that is because he had basically passed stuff off to his lieutenants and he was crafting the big multiversal story. He was crafting the actual important narrative of Phase 4, 5, and 6 in the multiversal saga, which was always going to arrive at Secret Wars. And the truth is, most of the stuff in Phase 4 and 5 was filler. Kevin was trying to do two crazy things at once. He was trying to establish new characters, keep Marvel's story going, while also being really, really involved with like certain projects. Like if you think about it, you look at like Shang-Chi, the Eternals, and then you look at Multiverse of Madness. They basically remade Multiverse of Madness. Waldron gets put on it, 17 drafts. They did a whole reshoot that was like 3 to 4 extra months. Kevin was like really, really involved because that was a really important story point for his Secret Wars. Similar thing to Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home was conceived as this part of this big story. So like, you just look at this and you're like, okay, Secret Invasion sucked balls because Kevin didn't give a fuck about that. He was focused on the multiversal shit. And the Marvel formula didn't translate to shows. His lieutenants were maybe not as talented as he thought, and it kind of just all falls apart because Feige's just not paying attention to it. And so there you have it, Marvel fans, the absolute perfect copium for why you are still allowed to be excited for Avengers Doomsday. Because this is the stuff that Kevin Feige was actually planning. It's the stuff that actually matters. It will pay off things that you've seen in the last couple of years. And all that other crap was just filler that, well, wasn't that important anyway. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video.